My name is Emily Carter. I'm 29 years old, and from the outside you'd probably say I'm doing well. I live in a nice part of Boston, work as a senior analyst at a respected finance firm, and have a savings account most people my age would envy. But success doesn't feel like much when you're still trying to win over the people who raised you, and it never seems to matter. Every month I send $1,700 straight to the mortgage company so my parents can keep their house. You'd think that would mean something. But somehow, I'm still the one who never did enough. Growing up, everything in our house revolved around expectations. My dad, Glenn, was loud with his opinions and stingy with praise. Nothing I did ever seemed to meet his invisible bar. I remember getting a perfect score on a math test once. He barely looked up from his newspaper. "That's what I expect," he said. "Don't get cocky." My mom, Rachel, was softer in tone but not in message. She had this way of brushing things off like they didn't matter. "That's nice, honey," she'd say, barely lifting her eyes from folding laundry or whatever new recipe she was reading. If I brought home good grades, the response was lukewarm. If my younger brother, Josh, passed a single class with a C, it was time for a pizza party. Josh was always the easy one, the fun one. 3 years younger than me, he figured out early that a joke or a sports stat would get more attention than anything I could do. When he made the football team, Mom and Dad bought him new cleats, threw him a barbecue, and plastered his picture all over the fridge. When I got into a top university with partial scholarship, they said, "You always were the studious one," like it was a hobby. My graduation came and went. No one came to the ceremony. Josh had a game that weekend. I told myself I didn't need them to be proud. I'd find pride in my own work. And for a while that helped. I focused on school, graduated with honors, and started climbing the ladder in finance. I got my own place, bought nice furniture, even started putting away money for the future. My calls home were short and polite. Nothing too deep, nothing too raw. But then 3 years ago, everything changed. It was a Tuesday evening when Dad called. He never called. So when I saw his name on the screen, I already knew something was wrong. His voice was quieter than usual. He'd been laid off. After over 2 decades at a manufacturing plant, the company was shutting down operations. He was 59 with no degree, few skills outside the plant, and no plan. Mom's job at the local library had never brought in much, and their savings were close to nothing. They were already 3 months behind on the mortgage and about to lose the house. I had just been promoted and was finally feeling a bit of breathing room financially. The idea of them getting kicked out of their home, the one I grew up in, even if it hadn't always felt like home, hit me hard. Without asking questions, I moved to a smaller apartment outside the city and offered to help. I started covering their mortgage, bills, groceries, car insurance, everything. "Just until Dad finds work," Mom had said, her eyes a little wet. That was the agreement. That agreement turned into 3 years. Dad eventually got part-time work at a local hardware store. It helped, but not enough to make a dent. Mom picked up extra hours too. Still, the big costs remained on me. Every month, I sent nearly $2,500 their way. Over time, it added up to more than $30,000. It wasn't about the money. What hurt was how they treated it, like it was expected, like it still didn't change how they saw me. Dad liked to lecture me about how I was investing my own money. He'd shake his head and say things like, "Real work doesn't happen behind a computer screen." Mom, on the other hand, kept asking if I was seeing anyone, hinting that I was falling behind in the life she thought I should be living. Josh. He moved to Austin after college, worked in sports merchandise sales, called on holidays, sent the occasional happy birthday text, and somehow remained the shining star. He didn't send a dime, but they still bragged about him like he was holding up the family name. This year, I decided to host Thanksgiving at my place. I had a bigger apartment now, with a dining room that actually fit a full table. I thought maybe this would be the year things shifted. Maybe they'd see the life I'd built, the effort I was still putting in. Maybe they'd see me. I planned every detail. Ordered the good wine, made Dad's favorite glazed ham, baked Mom's sweet potato casserole from scratch. I even found the brand of craft beer Josh liked. Cost nearly $400 for everything, but I didn't care. I wanted it to be perfect. As I drove home from the grocery store that Tuesday, my car packed with bags, I looked in the rearview mirror and tried to believe this year would be different. But deep down I knew better. Hope doesn't always die. Sometimes it just sits quietly in the back seat, refusing to get out. The morning of Thanksgiving, I woke up at 5 a.m. and went straight to the kitchen. The smell of roasting turkey filled the apartment by noon. The table was set with the best dishes I had. Wedding gifts from a marriage that hadn't lasted. But I still liked the plates. I even lit the fancy candles I'd been saving. Everything looked beautiful. Mom was the first to arrive. She brought a store-bought pumpkin pie, even though I had already said dessert was handled. White plates, she said, eyeing the table. Don't you think the blue ones would have looked warmer? I bit my tongue and smiled. Thanks for coming, Mom. The pie looks good. She wandered into the kitchen and frowned at the turkey. You're not using my recipe? I explained I tried something new with brining and herbs. She sighed. Well, I hope your father won't mind the change. You know how particular he is. Josh and his girlfriend, Mia, arrived not long after. Mia brought yellow roses, which caught me off guard. These are lovely, I said. Thank you. She smiled and offered to help. Meanwhile, Josh had already collapsed onto the couch, scrolling through his phone. Yo, Dad's bringing beer, he called out. Just regular stuff, none of that fancy stuff. When Dad showed up, he barely said hello. Hard place to find, he muttered. Could have used better directions. I reminded him I'd sent a message the night before. He grunted and dropped a six-pack on the counter. Cheap beer, not the craft selection I'd bought just for him. As I checked the turkey in the oven, I overheard him from the living room. Emily's gone all gourmet on us. Guess she wants to show off. My stomach tightened, but I kept working. When we finally sat down to eat, everything looked just right. The food was hot, the wine was poured, and everyone had a full plate. Then Dad cleared his throat. Let's pray. He thanked God for bringing us together, for Josh's success in his job, and for Mia joining the family this year. Not one word about the food, the home we were sitting in, or the daughter who had made it all happen. That's when something in me shifted. Something I'd held down for years. And just like that, I knew this would be the last Thanksgiving I ever hosted for them. I sat through most of dinner in silence, chewing each bite like it might fall apart if I looked away. Mia was the only one who said anything kind. She complimented the turkey, asked if I had brined it, even took a second helping of the stuffing. It's honestly perfect, she said. I thanked her, though my voice barely sounded like mine anymore. Dad barely touched the turkey. He piled ham on his plate and muttered, Not a fan of fruit and stuffing. Too sweet. You should have used your mother's recipe. Mom nodded, dabbing her lips with a napkin. Well, it's nice of Emily to try, isn't it? Her tone landed somewhere between polite and patronizing. Josh, 2 beers in, kept the conversation focused on the football season. He talked stats with Dad while Mom asked Mia about her job as a nurse. I was there, but I wasn't in it. Finally, Mia turned to me. What about you, Emily? How's work going? I started to answer, but Mom cut in. Oh, she's still at that firm, right? Always glued to that computer. So serious all the time. Not like Josh, he gets to travel, meet fun people. I set my fork down slowly. Actually, I was promoted last month. I manage portfolios worth over $300 million now. Mia looked impressed. Wow, that's huge. Dad let out a short laugh. Big numbers on a screen. Not the same as real work. I blinked. Dad, that screen is how I've paid your mortgage for the last 3 years. His jaw tightened. Here we go again. Always bringing up money. I stared at him. Because it matters. Because I've given everything I could, and you still treat me like I've done nothing. He pointed his fork at me. You act like you're doing us a massive favor. You're our daughter. It's called family. No, I said louder than I meant to. You don't get to use family when it's convenient. You don't get to ignore me, insult me, and then still expect handouts like it's my job to fix your mess. Mom reached for Dad's arm. Glenn, stop. I won't sit here and be talked to like this, Dad shouted. He pushed back from the table, his chair scraping hard against the floor. You think because you make some money you're better than us? Get out. The words hung there like smoke. For a second I thought I'd misheard him. This is my home, I said, standing. My voice was shaking, but I didn't care. I paid for the food. I pay your bills. And you have the nerve to tell me to get out. Mom looked down at her plate. Josh looked at me, uncomfortable. Mia was frozen, wide-eyed. Family isn't about money, Dad growled. I laughed. A sharp, bitter sound. No, you're right. It's about loyalty, right? About respect. So tell me, where was that loyalty when I graduated and none of you showed up? Where was the respect when you kept praising Josh for doing the bare minimum, while I bent over backward to help you stay afloat? Mom stood up now. This is jealousy, Emily. You've always been jealous of your brother. I looked at Josh. Really? You think that's what this is? He shook his head, not meeting my eyes. I didn't know you were paying the mortgage. I thought you were just helping a little with groceries or something. I laughed again, but this time it hurt. Of course they didn't tell you. That would have required honesty. And God forbid they admit they relied on me this whole time. Emily, stop, Mom said, her voice sharp now. You're ruining Thanksgiving. No, I said, walking over to the door and opening it wide. You ruined it the second you decided nothing I do is ever enough. You ruined it by treating me like an ATM with no feelings. You want Josh to be the golden child? Great. Let him take over the mortgage. The bills. All of it. Because I'm done. Dad's face went pale. You're being dramatic. I'm being clear, I said. This is over. The payments. The pretending. The begging for your approval. I'm done with all of it. Emily, Mom said softly, suddenly looking uncertain. We didn't mean. I cut her off. Save it. You never meant to hurt me. You just never cared enough not to. Mia stood slowly, placing her napkin on the table. I think we should go, she said to Josh, who looked like he wanted to disappear. One by one they filed out. Dad fuming. Mom tearful. Josh quiet. Mia stopped at the door and looked at me. You didn't deserve that, she whispered. You really didn't. I nodded. I couldn't speak anymore. When the door shut behind them, I stood in the silence of my apartment, surrounded by food no one had enjoyed in words I could never take back. My hands trembled as I cleared the plates. I didn't cry, not then. I was too full of something else, relief maybe, or just exhaustion. Later I got in the car and started driving. I didn't have a destination. I just needed to leave. I passed the old high school, the field where Josh used to practice, the library where Mom worked, and all the places where my achievements had never quite mattered. My phone rang. It was Amanda, my best friend. Hey, how did it go? She asked. I pulled into an empty parking lot and just said, it happened. Everything. I told her everything. The argument. The accusations. The final decision. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Emily, you did what you had to. You've been trying for years. They've never appreciated it. You don't owe them your whole life. I swallowed hard. It feels awful. I know. But it's also the first time you've ever stood up for yourself like this. That matters. That night I didn't go back to my apartment. I checked into a small hotel near the river. I couldn't face the leftovers or the silence. As I settled into the bed, my phone buzzed with messages from Mom and Dad. Angry ones. Guilt-tripping ones. Even a few from relatives I hadn't spoken to in months. I turned the phone off. The next morning I woke up to missed calls and emails. One stood out, an email from my lawyer. I had written him the night before, just to document that I was ending all financial support. His reply was short and clear. You're not legally obligated. You've done more than enough. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I whispered to myself, I'm allowed to stop. Back at the hotel I made a list. One by one I canceled every auto payment linked to their house. The mortgage, the electric bill, the water, the insurance. Each confirmation button I clicked felt like unlocking a chain I didn't even know I'd been carrying. The freedom didn't feel good yet, but it felt final. By midnight, I had shut off every financial tie connecting me to their household. The quiet in the hotel room felt different now, less like a break, more like a reckoning. I kept staring at the ceiling, thinking about how many times I'd convinced myself I was just helping, that it was temporary, that things would get better. But deep down I had been trying to buy something I was never going to get, respect maybe, or just love that didn't feel so conditional. The next morning I woke up to 18 missed calls and more texts than I could count. I didn't open most of them, but the subject lines and previews told me enough. How could you? You've crossed a line. You'll regret this. After all we've done for you. Dad had left a voicemail at 6:13 a.m. His voice low and cold. This stunt of yours ends now. You call me back today, Emily. You hear me? Another one from Mom said she hadn't slept, that her blood pressure was acting up. I hope you're happy now, she had written. You've put me in the hospital with stress. I didn't reply to any of them. I went downstairs and ordered coffee. While waiting, I opened an email from Marcus, my lawyer. There is no legal obligation to continue financial support, he wrote. Even if they try to claim an implied agreement, it's extremely unlikely to hold up. His tone was calm, matter-of-fact, but it felt like someone was finally confirming what I had doubted all along. I wasn't the villain here. I drove straight to work instead of going home. I needed structure, something normal. But even that didn't go according to plan. Just after 10 a.m., our receptionist called my line. Emily, she said. There are 2 people in the lobby who say they're your parents. They're demanding to speak with you. I froze. They came here. They say it's a family emergency. It's not. Please ask security to escort them out. And let me know if they return. She hesitated. Are you sure? I'm sure. 20 minutes later, my manager Jennifer knocked on my office door. Can I talk to you? She asked gently. I nodded, trying to act composed. I just wanted you to know we had a bit of a situation downstairs, she said, closing the door behind her. 2 individuals were making quite a scene. I assume you're aware. I nodded. Yes. My parents. She tilted her head, not judging, just curious. Everything okay? I took a breath and decided not to lie. Not really. I've been supporting them financially for a long time and I just stopped. They didn't take it well. Jennifer gave me a long, steady look. Do you need time off? No. Honestly, being here helps. Thank you for asking. She stood and walked toward the door. Well, we've let the security team know they are not to enter this building again unless you say otherwise. This is your space. We'll protect that. I nodded again, this time too choked up to speak. Later that afternoon, I got a message from Josh. Is it true? You've cut them off? Like completely? I stared at it for a while before replying. Yes. I'm done being the only one carrying the weight while being treated like I don't exist. A few minutes passed. Then what about the mortgage? And the bills? They're saying it's all due next week. Then maybe it's your turn, I typed. Or theirs. But it's not mine anymore. His reply came slower this time. You know I can't afford that. I'm barely making it in Austin. Then they'll need to figure it out. Sell the house. Get help. Grow up. That's cold, Em. I stared at that message. Stung, but not for the reason he thought. It stung because no one had ever thought it was cold when I was emptying my savings every month without thanks. It wasn't cold when I was giving everything and getting nothing, I wrote back. He didn't respond after that. Over the next few days, things got worse. Aunt Sandra, my mom's sister, sent me a furious text. How dare you abandon your parents like this? They gave you everything. Now they're going to lose their house. You're destroying your family for what, some petty grudge? I didn't reply. There was no point explaining anything to people who only ever heard one version of the story. But it wasn't just family. That Friday night, when I finally returned to my apartment, I saw Dad's old pickup truck parked just down the block. I didn't stop. I circled around twice before it was gone. They were trying to corner me at work, at home, through relatives. I couldn't keep guessing where the next ambush would come from. The next morning, an unknown number popped up on my screen. I almost declined, but something told me to answer. Emily, it's Mia, said a familiar voice. Josh's girlfriend. I got your number from his phone. I hope that's okay. I sat up. Yeah, of course. Is everything all right? Not really. I just thought you should know. Your parents came by your building earlier today. When you didn't answer, your dad tried to unlock the door. What? I guess a neighbor saw him and called the cops. No one was arrested, but it got tense. They said he doesn't have a key, and he claimed he did. I felt my stomach drop. Thank you for telling me. Seriously. There's more, she said, her voice lowering. Josh and I got into a fight about all this. He kept defending them, saying you were overreacting. And I couldn't stay quiet anymore. From everything I've seen and heard, they've treated you terribly. I let out a shaky breath. I'm sorry you had to be caught in it. You didn't cause it. You just stopped enabling it. That takes guts. I hope you know that. After we hung up, I called the local police to file a non-emergency report and request extra patrols around the building. They took my information calmly. "We'll keep an eye on the property," the officer said. "And if they come back, call 911 right away." That night I barely slept. Every sound outside made me jump. My nerves were shredded. By morning, the guilt campaign had shifted into overdrive. Mom texted me nonstop about their utilities being shut off. "The internet is out. It's freezing. What do we do? Why are you doing this to us?" I didn't reply. This was the part no one talks about. The grief that comes after choosing yourself. The silence that follows a long, exhausting scream. A week after the disaster, I found myself sitting in a small therapy office across from a woman named Dr. Levin. It was my first session. I told her everything. The money, the disrespect, the blow-up, the aftermath. She listened patiently, then asked, "How do you feel about your decision now?" "Guilty sometimes," I admitted. "Relieved too. But mostly sad. It feels like I've lost something I never really had." "That's a very real kind of grief," she said. "You've disrupted a long-standing dynamic, and that's not easy. Even healthy change can feel like loss." I nodded. Should I have done it differently? Given them more warning? Would that have changed anything? She asked. "No," I whispered. "They would have tried to guilt me into staying." "Then maybe the way you did it was the only way it could have worked." I didn't have an answer. But something about hearing those words made the sadness feel a little less heavy. As I left her office, I checked my phone and saw a single message from Josh. "Can we meet? Just us. No parents. No drama." I stared at his message for a while, unsure what to feel. Just us. No parents. No drama. It was the first olive branch that hadn't come wrapped in guilt. After all that had happened, part of me wanted to ignore it. But another part, quieter, still bruised, wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, someone in the family could actually listen. We agreed to meet at a quiet coffee shop halfway between my place and his hotel. I chose a table near the window, far from the register, just in case things went sideways. Josh walked in a few minutes late, looking rough. His eyes had dark circles under them, and he hadn't shaved. "Thanks for coming," he said, sitting down across from me. I nodded, unsure how to start. We sat in silence for a moment while the barista brought over his drink. Josh stirred it absently. "I broke up with Mia," he said, avoiding my eyes. "I didn't expect that. I'm sorry." "Don't be. She was right. About a lot of things." He looked up at me then, and there was something different in his face. Less defensiveness. More awareness. "After everything went down, I started thinking back," he continued. "Not just about Thanksgiving, but about everything. Growing up. The way things always were. And I realized you got the short end of the stick. Like all the time. And I never said anything. I let that sit between us." "No. You didn't." He nodded slowly. "I should have. But honestly, I didn't even notice back then. I liked being the favorite. I didn't want to see what it was costing you." It was the closest thing to an honest apology I'd ever heard from anyone in my family. "There's something else," he said. "I took over the utilities. Water, electric, internet. I couldn't do the mortgage. Not on what I make. But I told them it's their responsibility now." I blinked. "You did?" "Yeah. They weren't happy. Dad said I was choosing you over them. But I told him that wasn't true. I'm choosing what's right." And he didn't like hearing that. I sat back in my chair. "I didn't expect you to step in, Josh. I really didn't." "I know. And I should have a long time ago. But you shouldn't have had to carry it all alone." He hesitated, then added, "They're 3 months behind on the mortgage already. They didn't tell you, did they?" "No," I said quietly. "Of course not. They've been taking cash advances on credit cards. Using the money you sent to cover other things. They're deeper in debt than I thought." I felt the weight of that land hard in my chest. All those sacrifices. All that money. And they had still managed to dig the hole deeper. "They've been telling everyone you cut them off without warning," he said. "Aunt Sandra, Uncle Nick, even Grandma. But I set the record straight with Uncle Nick last night. Told him you've been paying their mortgage for 3 years. That explains the call I missed this morning," I muttered. He gave a tired smile. "Probably." He seemed stunned. We sat for a while longer talking about childhood moments that had always bothered me, and ones Josh had finally started to understand. He brought up the time I won first place in the science fair, but Dad spent the whole dinner talking about Josh's third place finish in a track meet the same day. I remember feeling weird about that, he admitted. But I didn't say anything because it felt good to be the one getting attention. You were a kid, I said. I never blamed you for how they treated us differently. He nodded. Still, I benefited from it. And now I'm trying to do better. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was something close and understanding. A willingness to look at the past with honest eyes. That was more than I'd ever expected. As we stood to leave, Josh asked, "Are you going to Grandma's for Christmas?" I hadn't thought about it. The idea felt impossible and strange. I don't know. Maybe it's too soon. He shrugged. Might be good to have someone on your side for once. Maybe, I said. Later that day, I got a text from Mia. Josh said you two talked. I'm glad. Ending things with him was hard but necessary. He's got some growing up to do. Your parents do too. But you? You've already done the hard part. Stay strong. It was the kind of message that sticks with you. I saved it in my notes app, just in case I needed a reminder. The support came from other places too. Jennifer, my manager, called me into her office the next morning. I assumed it was work-related, but instead she said, "I've been thinking about your situation. The company has a wellness fund. It's usually for housing emergencies or safety concerns. I think what you've been through qualifies." I blinked, surprised. That's very kind, but I think I'm okay. I've spoken with the police. They're monitoring the building. And my parents seem to have backed off for now. She nodded. Just know the offer stands. Also, the leadership teams noticed your work. Even with everything going on, you've stayed sharp, focused. Clients are happy. That doesn't go unnoticed. That moment meant more to me than I could explain. It was merit, pure and simple. No favoritism. No comparisons. Just someone saying you're doing well and we see it. 3 days later, I ran into Mom at a grocery store across town. I hadn't gone near their neighborhood, but I never expected her to show up near mine. She saw me near the produce section and blocked my path. "Emily," she said. She looked different, tired, disheveled, older. "Mom," I said flatly. "Excuse me. That's all you have to say?" she asked, voice rising. "After everything? This isn't the place." She followed me down the aisle. "You turned your brother against us. You've humiliated your father. You've destroyed this family." "I told the truth," I said quietly. "If that turns people against you, maybe ask yourself why. You've always been selfish," she said loudly enough that people started looking. "With your job and your attitude. You think money makes you better than us. We gave you everything." "No," I snapped. "You gave Josh everything. You gave me scraps. You forgot my graduation. You used my college fund to buy him a car. You only ever noticed me when you needed something. You see? Always keeping score," she cried. "I kept receipts," I said. "There's a difference." A store employee walked over looking uneasy. "Is everything all right here?" "She's harassing me," Mom said loudly. "My own daughter. In public." I turned to the employee. "I'm just leaving." Mom called after me. "This isn't over, Emily. Families don't just end like this. But they do. When they've been built on one-sided effort, on conditional love, on years of invisible damage. Sometimes they don't end all at once, but piece by piece, like a roof slowly falling in." That evening, a blurry phone video of the confrontation was circulating in local Facebook groups. The caption read, "Grown woman harassed by her mother in grocery store meltdown." A few people recognized me. I got texts from former classmates and even coworkers. My personal life and my professional image had collided. And for the first time, I didn't panic. I didn't try to fix it. I let the video run its course. The truth wasn't pretty, but it was finally out. A few days after the video spread online, I found myself back in Dr. Levin's office. I hadn't planned on talking about the store incident, but the weight of it had been sitting on my chest like a rock. I told her how Mom had shown up near my apartment, how she'd shouted accusations in public, how a stranger had filmed the entire scene. She said I was humiliating her. I muttered. But she came after me. I was just picking up apples. Dr. Levin didn't interrupt. When I finally stopped talking, she leaned forward a bit. When you start to set boundaries with people who have never respected any, they'll often respond like you've harmed them. But setting a boundary isn't aggression. It's self-respect. I stared at her hands folded gently in her lap. I feel like I'm grieving someone who's still alive. You are, she said softly. You're grieving the parents you never had, the childhood you deserved, the version of family you kept hoping would eventually show up. I nodded slowly. It's like letting go of a fantasy, and that deserves to be mourned. Later that evening, I got home and found a small envelope wedged in my mailbox. My name was written on the front in familiar cursive. I opened it carefully. It was a letter. From my mom. Dear Emily, I don't know if you'll even read this, but I asked Josh to pass it along if you'd take it. I've been trying to see things from your side. It's not easy. It hurts to realize I wasn't the mother you needed. I thought I was doing my best, but I see now that I favored Josh. He was easier. You asked harder questions. You needed more from me than I knew how to give. So I gave you independence and called it strength. I see it now, Emily. I really do. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know I'm sorry. Love, Mom. I read the letter 3 times, searching for the usual guilt trips, the subtle jabs. But they weren't there. For once, she didn't try to shift blame. She didn't beg for reconciliation. She just admitted it. I brought the letter to my next session with Dr. Levin. She read it slowly, nodding. This is a start, she said. But it's not a fix. It's okay to acknowledge her words without rushing to forgive. That's your choice. You don't owe anyone closure on their timeline. So I wrote a short reply. Mom, thank you for your letter. I appreciate the reflection. I'm not ready for more communication right now, but I hope your move to Arizona brings you peace. Emily. I didn't send anything else. Josh kept in touch. We started having coffee every couple of weeks. Nothing too deep at first. Mostly updates, occasional memories. But something was shifting. He was seeing things more clearly, and he didn't try to excuse them anymore. One day, he brought up the solar system model I made in 7th grade. You worked so hard on that thing, he said. The lights, the scale, even the little orbits. Should have won first place. But at dinner that night, Dad just kept talking about my football tryouts. I smiled faintly. I remember. I knew it was wrong. Even back then. I just didn't want to say anything. It felt good to be the one they bragged about for once. You were a kid, I said gently. Neither of us created that system. He looked down at his coffee. Yeah, but I definitely played along with it. We sat there in silence for a while, both realizing how much of our childhood had been shaped by things we couldn't control. It wasn't full healing, but it was honest. And that was enough. A few weeks later, my dad showed up near my apartment again. But this time, he didn't try to force anything. He just stood quietly by the curb. When I stepped outside, he looked surprised that I came over. Hi, Dad. He nodded. Didn't know if you'd talk to me. That depends, I said. Are you here to yell or to listen? He looked down at his shoes. To say something. That's all. He looked older. Slower. More tired than I remembered. We're leaving for Arizona next week, he said. But before we go, I wanted to say I wasn't fair to you. I didn't see what you were doing for us. What it cost you. It took everything in me not to cry. But I stayed still. You were right, he said quietly. You deserved better. You didn't get it. That's on us. There wasn't a grand apology. No offer to make it right. But the words weren't hollow either. He meant them. Thank you, I said. He nodded. If you ever want to reach out, your mom has the address. No pressure. I just wanted you to hear it from me. Safe travels, I said. I didn't promise anything more. That night I didn't feel angry. Or sad. Just still. Like something that had been spinning inside me had finally slowed down. Spring arrived a few weeks later. I was back in my regular routine, running in the mornings, volunteering on weekends, spending time with Amanda and some friends I trusted. I hosted a small dinner one Friday night. Amanda, Josh, a couple of coworkers. The same table where Thanksgiving had fallen apart now held laughter, shared stories, and people who saw me clearly. At one point, Amanda raised a glass. To chosen family, she said. The ones who show up because they want to, not because they have to. To chosen family, we echoed. I looked around the table and finally understood something. Family isn't always who raises you. Sometimes it's who shows up when things fall apart. Who respects your boundaries. Who lets you be you without asking for less. I'll probably always carry some pieces of that old pain. Some holidays might still sting. Some phone calls might still shake me. But now I know how to protect myself. Now I know I'm allowed to say no more. And most importantly, I know I'm allowed to say I deserve better. So if you've ever had to choose between protecting yourself and pleasing people who never saw your worth, choose yourself. Not out of spite, but because you're finally starting to believe you're worth protecting.